Hi, my name is Jeff Houghton from Milwaukee School of Freshwater Sciences, and I'm here to talk about habitat mapping work that John Jansen and I and the rest of our team have been conducting on Wisconsin's Lake Michigan shoreline. This is with funding from the Fund for Lake Michigan and in collaboration with Wisconsin's Department of Natural Resources. I thought I'd mention right off the bat that if anyone's interested in further information regarding our mapping work, they should feel free to look up uwm.edu/harbor maps online. You can find further information regarding all of our work and the maps I'll be referencing in this presentation. All of our mapping work stems from Brendan Dow's mapping of the Milwaukee estuary from 2016 to 2019. On the right, you can see the public outreach maps that were created from that previous work. When creation of the public outreach maps began, we quickly realized that there was more information that was available that would be able to fit on a single map. So the Milwaukee estuary quickly turned into 5 separate maps. Upon completion of the mapping of the Milwaukee estuary, we started to look north and considered mapping the 4 harbors within the proposed National Marine Sanctuary at the time. And we ended up receiving funding to map Port Washington, Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and 2 rivers from the Fund for Lake Michigan in 2019. All right, with that quick background behind us, I thought I'd go into how we create the maps. And through that process, kind of show you some of the information that gets put into them and show you how the process is done. The first thing we do when we're going into a harbor is start to run transects. And we do that from a boat using a side scan imaging sonar. And by running the transects, we can get a general idea of the overall bathymetry of the harbor, as well as build up a picture of the substrate on the bottom. You can see here in the upper left that initial bathymetry and the isobaths associated with that. In the center is the substrate classification, and in the lower left is a side scan mosaic. And that's essentially a top-down image of the bottom of the estuary. After we have those initial profiles, we end up going out and running further tracks to basically refine those initial images. And that results in our finalized bathymetry that you can see here, as well as a finalized side scan mosaic image. Utilizing that side scan mosaic image and looking at aerial images, we can actually go ahead and go in and start classifying the shoreline. So by telling where there's rock on shore from the aerial image and looking at that side scan mosaic, we can basically tell whether or not it's a rocky shoreline or a capped armor stone or sheet pile, etc. So using geographical information systems, we can start to actually quantify how much of the shoreline is what. And in the case of Port Washington, about 27% of the shoreline is capped armor stone. You can see the full breakdown on the left here. Furthermore, you can start analyzing the side scan mosaic that is from the estuary and start to classify what the substrate actually is. And essentially what you end up doing is going in and looking at the mosaic and drawing polygons around the different types of substrate. And then you can get a rough estimate of the percent of substrate in each estuary. Basically, all of that information ends up going into GIS, and we can run statistics on any of the information that we find in each harbor. And we've got that full rundown for Port Washington, Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and 2 rivers. In many cases, these estuaries are understudied, especially when it comes to fisheries. So one of the things that we've done is collaborated with the Wisconsin DNR and gone out and electrofished. And if you don't know about electrofishing, essentially what we're doing is driving around in a boat and introducing a current into the water, which temporarily stuns the fish and allows us to net them and work them up, basically identify them by species and get a weight and a length in many cases. And after that, we can put them back in the water and they swim away free, uninjured. One of the great benefits of electrofishing is it allows us to sample different types of shoreline. So you can see our different transects in Port Washington here. And we basically are out there trying to fish different types of shore to see what types of fish live where. And we've done that in Port Washington with about a mile of electrofishing conducted, as well as in Sheboygan with about a mile and a half, and Manitowoc around 2.5 miles, and Two Rivers with just less than 2 miles. All that information, or all of the fishes that we collect, are gathered into a singular database, and we can start to more fully understand and compare the different estuaries. For example, it looks like here that Sheboygan has a very strong smallmouth bass fishery. Likewise, some of the more interesting things that we found were brown trout and rainbow trout hiding out in the rocky areas of Port Washington, as well as a large bowfin community in Two Rivers. Through this whole process, we also take the opportunity to jump in the water and conduct dive surveys, which helps us get a better understanding of the makeup of the underwater community. Here you can see Hemimysis anomala in Manitowoc. They're hiding within the armor stone in the outer harbor. They're a recently invasive species from the Ponto-Caspian region, and they're actually a small mysid shrimp. We conduct similar surveys with remotely operated vehicles as well, and also utilize drop cams. Ultimately, what we're looking for are those unique stories and content to fill out the public-facing maps. One of the other things that I'd like to talk about is the fact that we're looking for biological hotspots in each system. So those unique areas that might be highly productive to fishes and other species in each estuary. So these stories and hotspots can take many forms. One interesting story is ospreys nesting in Two Rivers. Here you can see a chick with its mother successfully nesting in a nesting box. Another interesting story would be finding nursery habitat in Two Rivers. You can see in the upper right here a young of year largemouth bass that we seined up at the boat landing in Two Rivers. Another example would be the combined disposal facility in Manitowoc. It's actually turned into the Charles Sontag birding area. It's a highly productive birding area in Manitowoc. Another example is the history of salmon and their natural history in the Great Lakes. Here you can see a male king salmon chasing a female up Sauk Creek in Port Washington. One of the other things that we bring in the maps, especially for this area, is connection to Wisconsin Shipwreck Coast. And we've been talking with Russ Green about incorporating some of their information into our mapping. And all that's resulted in the stage that we're at now. So we basically have preliminary maps with some of the call-outs of the information that we've developed. And we've got all that for Port Washington, Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and Two Rivers. And really we're at the stage of starting to develop those public outreach maps. So we're working with our colleague Kim Beckman at the School of Peck of Arts to start developing the public outreach maps, which is a great lead-in into a shameless plug for the EWM.edu/Harbor Maps website, because that's what's going to host all the new information that we've gathered, as well as the new public outreach maps. Another thing that we've done during our research is to start to identify areas that might be prime targets for habitat improvements in each estuary. And basically what we've gone through is ID'd areas that might be prime examples of either areas that could be improved or areas that are already working well that should be mimicked. And we've got those for really all 4 harbors in Port Washington, Manitowoc, Sheboygan, and Two Rivers. And to close things out, I'm happy to announce that we recently received funding at the beginning of this year to really finalize all the estuaries along Wisconsin coastline. So at this point, the only ones that were missing were Racine, Kenosha, Algoma, and Kewaunee. And we recently received funding for Fund for Lake Michigan to essentially complete the shoreline up the Wisconsin coastline. And with that, I thank you for your time, and please feel free to reach out with any questions. My name's, again, Jeff Houghton at UWM School of Freshwater Sciences. You can see my email in the lower left. Thank you very much.